Commander Frank Miller stared at the communication panel as it flickered for the third time that day. Something was wrong. After 15 years working alongside alien species at Outpost Epsilon, he had developed good instincts about these things. The quantum communication network never failed. It was the backbone of galactic civilization, connecting thousands of worlds across vast distances. Yet here he was, watching it falter again. "How long has this been happening?" Frank asked the thin gray-skinned alien beside him. Ambassador Ziltaron blinked his large eyes slowly. "First time in my lifetime, most concerning." His voice trembled slightly. Frank noticed the ambassador's hands shaking too. Strange reaction for just a communication glitch. Frank tapped his personal device. "Dr. Wright, can you come to the command center? Bringing something unusual you should see." 15 minutes later, Dr. Olivia Wright hurried into the room. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she carried a medical scanner in one hand. As the station's leading xenobiologist, she spent most of her time studying the biological differences between humans and the 37 alien species represented on Outpost Epsilon. "What's wrong with Ambassador Ziltaron?" she asked immediately, moving to the alien's side. The ambassador now sat slumped in a chair, his gray skin paler than usual. "The network is failing," Frank explained, pointing to the flickering display. "Started about 3 hours ago. Minor glitches at first, but getting worse." Olivia ran her scanner over the ambassador. "His nervous system is showing stress patterns I've never seen before." She looked around the room. "And it's not just him." Frank followed her gaze. Throughout the command center, he noticed other alien species showing signs of distress. The jellyfish-like Medusan was changing colors rapidly. The insectoid Vrexil were clicking their mandibles in what he recognized as their anxiety display. Only the humans in the room seemed unaffected. "What's happening to them?" Frank asked quietly. "I'm not sure yet." Olivia adjusted her scanner settings. "But I think it might be related to the network problems. Most council species have developed a subtle psychic connection to the network over generations. Humans haven't been connected long enough to develop the same dependency." The main screen at the front of the command center suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission. The face of Council Representative Susan Bennett appeared. Her usually composed expression was replaced with worry. "Outpost Epsilon, this is Representative Bennett from Central Council. Are you experiencing network disruptions?" "Affirmative," Frank replied. "And we're seeing concerning physical effects in non-human crew members." Susan nodded grimly. "It's happening everywhere. The Council is in emergency session. This isn't just a technical malfunction. The disruption patterns show signs of deliberate sabotage." The room fell silent. Even through the spotty connection, the gravity of her words was clear. "Who would have the capability to attack the entire network?" Frank asked. "Unknown. But I need you to secure the Outpost's network node." "Earthspace. Command is mobilizing all available ships." Susan glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer to the camera. "Commander, what I'm about to tell you is classified. Early reports suggest that human personnel are showing significantly less negative impact than other species. Our evolution on Earth may have inadvertently prepared us for this crisis." Frank thought about Earth with its high gravity, extreme weather patterns, and evolutionary history filled with predators and competition. Most council species evolved on worlds with far more forgiving conditions. Humans were often mocked as Deathworlders, primitives from a harsh planet. Now that background might be their advantage. As if to emphasize Susan's point, another alien crew member collapsed nearby. Medical personnel rushed forward. "Dr. Wright," Frank said, "I need a full report on the physiological differences that might explain our resilience." "Already on it," Olivia replied, her fingers flying over her datapad. The communication screen flickered again, and Susan's image broke into pixelated fragments before stabilizing. "One more thing," she said urgently. "We've intercepted a partial message in an unknown language. Sending it now. Your communications specialist might help decode it." The file transfer bar crawled across the screen, nearly failing several times before completing. Frank immediately forwarded it to Alan Foster, the station's communication expert. "Backup systems online," announced a voice from across the command center. "Local communications restored." Frank nodded. At least they could talk within the station, now. He turned to address the room. "All personnel, we are implementing emergency protocols. This is not a drill. Human staff, please assist any non-human colleagues showing signs of distress. Security teams, establish perimeter control. We don't know if this network attack is a prelude to something else." As the crew moved with practiced efficiency, Olivia pulled Frank aside. "I've been reviewing medical data from across the station. The alien symptoms correlate directly with how long their species has been connected to the network. It's almost like withdrawal." Frank frowned. "You mean they've become biologically dependent on it?" "Exactly. And humans haven't had time to develop that dependency. Our nervous systems still function perfectly well without the subtle field the network generates." A young officer rushed toward them, tablet in hand. "Commander," Mr. Foster decoded part of the message Representative Bennett sent. Frank took the tablet and read the text, his face darkening. "Get me a secure line to Earth Space Command immediately." Olivia looked over his shoulder at the partial translation. "Primary phase complete. Network corruption at 37%. Deathworlders remain unaffected as predicted. Proceed with Phase 2 once dependency collapse reaches critical." "They knew," Frankie said quietly. "Whoever is doing this knew exactly what would happen. They're counting on most species being incapacitated." "But they didn't count on us," Olivia replied. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Medical teams worked to stabilize the worsening conditions of alien crew members. Security teams secured vital systems. And in the communications lab, Alan Foster worked frantically to decode more of the mysterious message. When Frank entered the lab, Alan looked up from his workstation, eyes wide. "Commander, I've found something." The message was sent on a carrier wave that piggybacks on the quantum network. Very sophisticated. But here's the thing. The language structure matches fragments found in ancient ruins on Proxima Centauri. Phi. The ruins that predate all known civilizations, how is that possible? "I don't know, but there's more." Alan pulled up another screen. "I've been monitoring distress calls. It's not just communication that's failing. Defense systems, navigation, even life support on some stations. They're all linked to the network." Frank's personal device chimed with an emergency alert. It was a direct message from Admiral Diane Carter. "All human vessels mobilize. Council worlds going dark. Earth now center of operations. Deathworlders now first line of defense." Frank looked around at his human crew members working calmly amid the crisis. The term Deathworlders had always been used to dismiss humans as primitive newcomers. Now it sounded like something else entirely, perhaps the galaxy's only hope. 2 weeks after the network began failing, Admiral Diane Carter stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Defiant. Around her, human officers worked at their stations while screens showed images of distress across the galaxy. Ships drifting without guidance. Space stations running on emergency power. Planets falling silent one by one. "Status report," Diane ordered, her voice steady despite the dark circles under her eyes. 17 more council worlds have gone dark in the last 6 hours, reported her executive officer. "Our ships have evacuated who they could, but we're running out of places to take refugees." Diane nodded grimly. "And our communications? Old radio systems are working, but the range is limited. Engineer Collins has teams installing relay stations, but it's slow work. The quantum network that had connected the galaxy for thousands of years was now almost completely dead. Only humanity had been prepared for this possibility. Earth Space Command had always maintained backup systems, a habit born from humanity's cautious nature. Other species had seen it as primitive paranoia. Now it was saving lives. The door to the bridge slid open, and Dr. Kyle Martinez entered. As the fleet's leading medical researcher, he had been working nonstop to understand why humans remained unaffected by the network's collapse. "Admiral, I have findings to share," he said, setting his tablet on the command table. "I've completed comparative studies between human biology and the affected species." Diane gestured for him to continue. It's our stress responses, Kyle explained, bringing up diagrams on the screen. Earth's high gravity, variable climate, and predator-filled history created humans with robust fight-or-flight mechanisms. Our bodies naturally disconnect from outside influences when under threat. The other species evolved in safer environments. They developed systems that rely on constant connection. So our evolutionary background as Deathworlders is protecting us, Diane said thoughtfully. Exactly. What they considered our primitive traits are now our greatest strength. An urgent message alert sounded. The communications officer turned quickly. Admiral, we have a transmission from Security Officer Woods aboard the Council flagship. The main screen switched to show a dark-haired woman in an Earth Space Command uniform. Behind her, emergency lights flashed, and alien crew members moved, sluggishly or lay slumped at their stations. Admiral Carter, this is Patricia Woods reporting from the Harmony of Stars. I've found evidence of deliberate sabotage. The network nodes were compromised by devices installed during routine maintenance nearly a year ago. Diane leaned forward. Do you have visual? Patricia held up a small metallic object with strange markings. Found 3 of these connected to the main communication array. They're designed to look like standard parts, but they've been slowly corrupting the network signals. Can you contain them? Already removed and isolated. But Admiral, there's more. Patricia lowered her voice. I found similar devices in the life support systems. Someone wanted to do more than just cut communications. If they'd fully activated, everyone aboard would have died. Who placed them? Working on that now. The maintenance logs show entries by Council technicians, but the security footage for those periods has been deleted. Send us everything you have. And Patricia, be careful. If there are saboteurs on board, they might still be active. After the transmission ended, Diane turned to her officers. This is no longer just a crisis, it's an attack. While the flagship Defiant coordinated Earth's response on the Council homeworld of Celestis, the situation was growing desperate. Council chambers that once hosted representatives from hundreds of worlds now held only a fraction of that number. Many were too ill to attend, their bodies struggling with network withdrawal. Council Representative Susan Bennett stood before the weakened assembly, her human frame standing straight, while many alien diplomats hunched or trembled. The evidence is clear, she told them. This was a coordinated attack and we need to respond accordingly. Earth is mobilizing its fleet and offering refuge to affected populations. High Counselor Vex Lear, a tall, blue-skinned diplomat, rose, shakily from his seat. We once called humans Deathworlders as an insult. Now we must ask these Deathworlders to lead us. Murmurs spread through the chamber. For some, the idea of primitive humans taking charge was still difficult to accept, even in crisis. Earth has maintained military forces when other worlds embraced total peace, Susan continued. We've kept combat training when others thought it barbaric. We've studied war when the Council banned such studies as uncivilized. Those preparations may save us all now. As the Council debated, Engineer Daniel Collins worked in a makeshift communications lab on Earth's moon base. Around him, a team of human technicians assembled parts that most of the galaxy had abandoned centuries ago. Radio waves, Daniel explained to a group of alien observers watching in amazement. Simple, reliable technology. Not as fast as quantum communications, but impossible to corrupt in the same way. One of the aliens, a scholar from a world known for its advanced technology, leaned forward with interest. Your people still teach these primitive methods, Daniel smiled. On Earth we have a saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. We keep old technology as backup. Now we're building a new network using principles from our past. The alien looked confused. Eggs in baskets? It means don't rely on just one system or method. Humanity survived on Earth by being adaptable, by having alternatives when primary systems fail. Across the solar system, more humans were stepping into leadership, roles as alien species struggled. Dr. Olivia Wright had established treatment protocols for the most severely affected aliens. Her research showed that careful exposure to mild stress could help them adapt to functioning without the network. Meanwhile, in deep space, Captain Laura Vasquez led a small fleet toward the galactic core. If the network had been attacked, the central hub would hold answers. Her ship carried a mixed crew, mostly humans but also aliens who had responded well to Dr. Wright's treatments. "We're entering the restricted zone," her navigator announced. The central hub had always been off-limits to all but specially authorized council vessels. "Proceed with caution," Laura ordered. "Sensor sweep for any active vessels." The scan revealed something unexpected: a massive ship of unknown design, docked directly to the hub structure. "No match in our databases," reported the sensor officer. "But its energy signature is similar to the sabotage devices found on the Harmony of Stars." Laura studied the image on her screen. "Get me a secure channel to Admiral Carter, and prepare boarding teams. We need to know who's behind this attack." Back on Earth, a historical researcher named William Patel made a disturbing discovery in ancient council records. The symbols on the sabotage devices matched writings from a species believed extinct for thousands of years. The Void Heralds had nearly destroyed galactic civilization once before, and now they appeared to have returned. As panic spread across the stars, humans stood firm. Their ships maintained order, their colonies welcomed refugees, their scientists sought solutions. The term Deathworlders was now spoken with hope instead of disdain. Humanity's time to rise had come. Captain Laura Vasquez led her team through the empty corridors of the network hub. The massive structure at the galactic core should have been bustling with council technicians. Instead, it was silent and dim, operating on emergency power. The only light came from the team's helmet lamps and the occasional flicker of damaged systems. "Life signs ahead," whispered her second-in-command, pointing to a scanner. "Non-human but not matching any council species." Laura signaled her team to move carefully. They were all humans, selected for this mission because they remained completely unaffected by the network collapse. Each carried weapons that most council members would have considered barbaric, physical guns and blades rather than energy weapons. Laura had insisted on them, suspecting that whoever attacked the network might have ways to disable more advanced technology. They turned a corner and froze. A tall figure stood at a control panel, its back to them. It had 4 arms and skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Not a council species, nothing Laura had ever seen before. "Identify yourself," Laura called out, her weapon raised. The figure turned slowly. Its face had no mouth, only large silvery eyes that reflected their lights back at them. It raised its upper arms in what might have been a peaceful gesture, but Laura didn't lower her weapon. "You are not affected," the creature said, its voice coming from a small device on what would be its chest. "Interesting. The primitive species proves resilient." "Who are you?" Laura demanded. "Are you responsible for the network attack?" "I am merely an observer. My kind watches the cycles of galactic civilization." The creature's skin rippled. "You may call me Herald." Laura's blood ran cold. William Patel's research had mentioned the Void Heralds, a species supposedly extinct for thousands of years. "Why attack the network?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "To correct an imbalance," the Herald replied. "The council races grew soft, dependent. They forgot how to survive without their technology. Such weakness invites greater threats from beyond." Before Laura could respond, her communication device buzzed. "Captain, this is Security Team 2. We've found something you need to see. Central Chamber, Level 5. Keep him covered," Laura told her team, then spoke to the Herald. "You're coming with us." The central chamber was vast, with walls of transparent material showing the stars outside. But what caught Laura's attention was the row of stasis pods along one wall. Inside each pod was a council member, connected to machines by dozens of tubes and wires. "We've found them like this," said the security officer. "According to these readings, they've been here for months." Laura approached the nearest pod. Inside was a perfect duplicate of High Counselor Vex Lear, the same council member she had seen at meetings just weeks ago. "Infiltrators," the Herald said calmly. "The real council members have been here while my kind took their places above. We have been guiding policy for some time now. Why? Laura demanded. To prepare the galaxy. The council races grew complacent in their peace. They were not ready for what comes. On Earth, Colony Administrator Joseph Hayes coordinated the largest refugee operation in human history. Millions of aliens from failing worlds were being evacuated to human colonies, where they could receive treatment for network withdrawal and protection from the growing chaos. We need more temporary housing in the Australian zone, Joseph told his staff. And the medical teams report we're running low on stabilizers for the Medusan refugees. A young aide rushed into the room. Sir, we have a situation. Several aliens have become violently ill after exposure to human guards. What? Get Dr. Wright on the line immediately. Minutes later, Dr. Olivia Wright's face appeared on the main screen. It's not an illness, she explained after hearing the report. It's a reaction. The aliens who got sick were all high-ranking officials who arrived recently. Their bodies are reacting to human stress hormones. Normal council species don't have this reaction. Joseph frowned. What are you saying? They're not who they claim to be. These officials are disguised infiltrators, and something in human biology is toxic to them. Similar reports began coming in from around Earth and other human colonies. Alien officials exposed to humans under stress were falling ill, their disguises literally melting away to reveal creatures with color-shifting skin and multiple limbs. At the council emergency session, Representative Susan Bennett was in the middle of a speech when several council members began to convulse. Security teams moved in, but Susan raised her hand. Wait, she said calmly. Let me try something. She stepped closer to the affected aliens and spoke loudly, her voice filled with controlled anger. You lied to us. You infiltrated our government. You endangered billions of lives. The emotional display had an immediate effect. The aliens' skin began to bubble and shift, their disguises failing as Susan's human stress hormones reached them. Guards rushed forward as the creatures revealed their true forms, identical to the herald that Captain Vasquez had encountered at the hub. In the confusion that followed, historical researcher William Patel made the connection that would change everything. He burst into Admiral Carter's office without ceremony, his tablet filled with ancient texts and images. They're not extinct, he said without preamble. The Void Heralds. They're the same species that nearly destroyed the Council 10,000 years ago. But here's the thing. They didn't attack out of hatred. Diane looked up from her reports. Explain. According to the oldest records, the Heralds claimed to be preparing the galaxy for something worse, something that feeds on civilizations that grow too comfortable, too dependent on single systems. So they attacked the network to what? Toughen up the council races? William nodded. And they didn't expect humans. We're the variable they didn't account for. Earth was a protected reserve when they last emerged. They had no data on Deathworlders. The flagship Defiant, Dr. Kyle Martinez made another breakthrough. He tested the blood samples from captured infiltrators against human hormones. Adrenaline is like acid to them, he told Admiral Carter over a secure channel. Human fear and stress responses create chemicals that dissolve their disguises. That's why they wanted most communication to go through the network, to keep physical contact minimal. Across what remained of council space, human military training was being implemented for the first time. General Nancy Rivera, once considered too aggressive by council standards, now led defense planning for the Central Worlds. The Void Heralds have a fleet hiding in the Carina Nebula, she informed her mixed human-alien command staff. Our scout ships confirmed it this morning. They've been watching, waiting for civilization to collapse from network withdrawal. A Medusan commander raised a tentacle. How can we fight when half our forces can barely function? Nancy displayed a training program on the main screen. This is how humans prepare for stress. These exercises will help your people function without the network. They won't be easy, but they'll work. For the first time in thousands of years, the peaceful council races began to train for war. Human military doctrine, once seen as barbaric and unnecessary, became required study. The few aliens who adapted quickest became trainers for others. And at the network hub, Captain Laura Vasquez's team made one more critical discovery. Hidden behind security protocols was a message from what the Herald called the true enemy. It showed only darkness moving between stars, consuming light. "This is what we prepare for," the Herald told her. "This is why we test civilizations. The soft ones always fall first." Laura stared at the disturbing images, then made her decision. She opened a channel to Earth. "Admiral Carter, we need to talk to these Heralds. Not as enemies, but as potential allies. Because if what they're showing me is real, we're going to need every advantage we can get." The galaxy was changing, old powers were falling, and humanity, the Deathworlders, the primitives, were rising to meet a threat beyond imagination. General Nancy Rivera stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, watching red markers spread across formerly peaceful sectors. 3 months had passed since the network collapse began. Now the Void Heralds were moving openly, their hidden fleet emerging from the Carina Nebula to attack weakened worlds. "Their ships are faster and more heavily armed than anything in the Council fleet," she told the War Council assembled in Earth's military headquarters. "But they fight with predictable patterns. They rely too much on technology and not enough on adaptability." Around the table sat the most unusual military leadership the galaxy had ever seen. Human generals alongside those few alien commanders who had adapted to life without the network. The aliens still struggled, but they were learning quickly, under human guidance. "We've lost 23 outer colonies in the past week," reported a tall reptilian commander from the Draco system. His species had evolved on a world almost as harsh as Earth, making them quicker to recover than most. "The Heralds target communication arrays first, then defense systems," Nancy nodded. "Then we change our strategy. Engineer Collins has modified our ships to operate completely independently of any network. We'll use old Earth military tactics, radio silence, coded communications, and hit-and-run attacks." A holographic message appeared above the table. Admiral Carter's face looked tired but determined. "General Rivera, the Council has officially transferred command authority of all remaining military forces to Earth Space Command. You now have control of every combat-ready vessel in Council space." Nancy straightened her uniform. "Understood, Admiral. We won't let them down." "One more thing," Diane added. "Former criminal Eric Summers has made progress reverse engineering the Herald technology. I'm sending him to your command." Minutes later, a thin man with sharp eyes was escorted into the war room. Eric Summers had been serving a prison sentence for hacking Earth's banking system when the crisis began. Now his skills were too valuable to waste. "The Herald's ships use a quantum entanglement system similar to the old network," Eric explained without preamble. "I found a weakness. Their targeting systems get confused by random flight patterns and unexpected maneuvers." "Unpredictability," Nancy said. "The one thing humans excel at." Across the room, military historian Vincent Clark spoke up. "There's a precedent for this. During Earth's Second World War, smaller forces defeated larger ones using guerrilla tactics and unconventional warfare." "Exactly," Nancy agreed. "We'll divide our fleet into small independent battle groups. No central command structure for them to target. Hit-and-run attacks only. Never engage in direct combat with their larger vessels." As the new strategy was implemented across human and allied forces, Dr. Paul Graham worked in his laboratory on Earth. The medical bay was filled with volunteer aliens all undergoing his experimental procedure. "The treatment temporarily modifies your biology to mimic human stress responses," he explained to a group of Council diplomats. "It won't be comfortable. Your bodies will produce adrenaline and other hormones your species hasn't experienced in thousands of generations." A blue-skinned diplomat stepped forward. "Will it hurt?" "Yes," Paul said honestly. "But it will also help you function without the network, and the Heralds won't be able to disguise themselves among you anymore. Your bodies will produce chemicals that reveal them on contact." In orbit above Earth, the first battle groups prepared to depart. Captain Laura Vasquez had been promoted to command one of these groups. 5 small, fast ships with experienced human crews and a few treated aliens. Their mission was simple: disrupt Herald supply lines and gather intelligence. Remember your training, Laura told her crews during the final briefing. Unpredictable movements at all times. No standard formations. Communicate using the encrypted radio system only. A young officer raised his hand. Captain, is it true we have a Herald prisoner aboard? Laura nodded. Yes, the one who calls himself an observer. He's providing intelligence on Herald weaknesses. Admiral Carter believes he's part of a faction that disagrees with the main Herald force. As the battle groups deployed, the first real test of human military doctrine against the technologically superior Heralds began. Initial encounters were disastrous. Human ships destroyed, alien allies retreating in confusion. The Heralds' technology seemed unbeatable. Then Eric Summers made another breakthrough. He called an emergency meeting with General Rivera and Admiral Carter. They're not using AI targeting systems like we thought, he explained, showing them data from recent battles. They're using genetically modified pilots connected directly to their ships. The ships and pilots are one organism. That's why they're so fast, Diane realized. Yes, but there's a weakness. The Heralds evolved in deep space, not on planets. They never developed resistance to certain bacteria that are harmless to humans. Nancy leaned forward. Are you suggesting biological warfare? Not exactly, Eric said. More like biological confusion. If we release these bacteria near their ships, their sensors will be overwhelmed trying to analyze the unfamiliar microorganisms. It would be like a sensory overload. The next battles showed the effectiveness of this approach. Human ships released canisters of common Earth bacteria near Herald vessels. The effect was immediate. The enemy ships began to move erratically, their targeting systems failing as their biological pilots suffered sensory confusion. For the first time, the seemingly unstoppable Herald advance faltered. On a reclaimed council world, military historian Vincent Clarke worked with alien scholars to study ancient conflicts. They discovered records of a similar Herald invasion 10,000 years earlier. They test civilizations, Vincent explained to Admiral Carter over a secure channel. They attack when they detect complacency, when species become too dependent on single technologies or systems. Why? Diane asked. According to these records, they believe they're strengthening the galaxy against something worse. But here's the interesting part. In the last invasion, they eventually retreated after facing significant resistance. They don't fight to the death. They fight until the defending civilization proves its adaptability. This information changed the strategic approach. Instead of trying to destroy the Herald forces completely, human commanders focused on demonstrating humanity's unpredictability and resilience. Each battle became a test, a demonstration of creative problem-solving. General Rivera implemented tactics from Earth's most unconventional military histories. Submarine warfare strategies applied to space combat. Guerrilla tactics adapted for void battles. Ancient nomadic horseback fighting techniques translated to three-dimensional space movement. The Heralds had never encountered such unpredictable opponents. Their vast technological advantage began to mean less with each engagement. They could not anticipate what humans would do next, because humans themselves often didn't know until the moment arrived. In her flagship, Nancy watched as a small group of human vessels executed a maneuver that would have been considered suicidal by Council standards. They accelerated directly toward a Herald dreadnought, then scattered in 15 different directions at the last second, confusing the enemy targeting systems and allowing them to slip past the defenses. That wasn't in the battle plan, her executive officer noted with surprise. Nancy smiled. No, it wasn't. That's exactly why it worked. Across what remained of Council space, the term Deathworlder tactics entered military vocabulary. The harsh evolutionary history that had made humans physically tough had also created minds that thrived on chaos and challenge. What the Council had once seen as primitive aggression was now recognized as invaluable adaptability. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, once dismissed as barely civilized newcomers, now led the fight for survival with their unpredictable, impossible tactics. Admiral Diane Carter stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the final battle unfold. 6 months had passed since the network collapse began. Now the combined human-alien fleet surrounded the Void Herald stronghold, a massive space station, hidden in the darkness between spiral arms of the galaxy. "All battle groups report ready, Admiral," her communications officer announced. Diane nodded. "Send the message we discussed. Give them one last chance to surrender." The message was simple. The test is over. The galaxy has proven its adaptability. Further conflict serves no purpose. For several minutes, there was no response from the Herald station. Then a transmission came through. On the main screen appeared the now familiar shifting colors of a Herald's skin. This one wore elaborate markings that designated it as a leader. "The test is not of our design," the Herald said, its artificial voice emotionless. "We are merely the first wave, the harbingers. If you cannot overcome us, you cannot survive what follows." "We've overcome your attacks," Diane replied firmly. "We've adapted to the network collapse. The council races are recovering and learning to function independently." "Not enough. You have shown promise, particularly your Deathworlder species, but the galaxy remains vulnerable. Too many worlds still cling to old patterns." Diane stepped closer to the screen. "Then help us prepare. Join us instead of testing us. Share your knowledge." The Herald was silent for a long moment. "Impossible. Our purpose is to test, to strengthen through challenge. That is our evolutionary imperative." "Then we'll do it ourselves," Diane said. "Computer, end transmission." The Admiral turned to her. "Crew, launch the assault. All battle groups execute Plan Odysseus." Across the fleet, ships began to move in seemingly random patterns. This was humanity's greatest tactical innovation yet, a battle plan with no fixed strategy. Each commander had broad objectives but complete freedom in how to achieve them. The resulting chaos was impossible for the Herald ships to predict or counter. In her battle group, Captain Laura Vasquez led a small team of fast attack vessels directly toward the station. Their mission was not to attack, but to deliver a special payload. Eric Summers and a team of engineers who would attempt to access the Herald central systems. "Approaching target zone," Laura's pilot announced. "Heavy resistance ahead." Laura studied the tactical display. "Evasive pattern Delta. Remember, unpredictable movements only." Her ships danced through enemy fire, their movements following no logical pattern. Herald targeting systems designed to predict standard attack vectors struggled to lock onto vessels that moved like startled animals rather than military spacecraft. Inside the Herald station, Eric Summers and his team moved through dark corridors. The observer Herald who had defected guided them toward the central command node. "Their systems are biological, not electronic," the observer explained. "They will sense your presence soon." Eric nodded. "Then we'd better hurry." The plan was audacious. Not to destroy the station, but to access its database. If the Heralds were truly preparing the galaxy for some greater threat, humanity needed to know what that threat was. Back in the main battle, Dr. Olivia Wright monitored the condition of their alien allies from the medical ship Hope. The treated, Council species were holding up well, their borrowed human stress responses allowing them to function even in the chaos of battle. "Doctor," her assistant called, "long-range sensors are picking up something strange at the edge of the battle zone. Energy readings unlike anything we've seen before." Olivia frowned at the data. "Get me Admiral Carter immediately." As the battle raged, historian William Patel made a final connection in his research. He rushed to the communication center on Earth. "I need to speak to whoever's in command of the fleet," he insisted. "It's about the Heralds. I know what they're really doing." Minutes later, his findings were transmitted to Admiral Carter. Ancient records showed a pattern. The Heralds appeared every 10,000 years, always testing galactic civilization with increasingly difficult challenges. But they weren't the real threat. They were preparing the galaxy for something they called the Void, an entity or species that consumed entire civilizations. On the Herald station, Eric's team reached the central chamber. Massive biological computers filled the room, pulsing with strange light. We need to connect here, the observer herald said, pointing to what looked like a neural interface. But it will only accept herald biology. Eric looked at the defector. Will it accept yours? Yes, but the connection may kill me. Eric hesitated, then nodded. It's your choice. The observer stepped forward. My kind believes in strengthening the galaxy through challenge. This is my challenge. As the observer connected to the system, information flooded into the human devices Eric had brought. Star charts, tactical data, and finally, images of the true enemy. Living darkness moving, between galaxies consuming light and life. My God, Eric whispered. The observer convulsed as the connection overwhelmed its system. Now you understand. The void comes. It has consumed 12 galaxies already. It seeks the unprepared, the complacent. You have shown potential, Deathworlders. You may be the galaxy's best hope. With those words, the observer herald collapsed. Eric transmitted the data to the fleet. Admiral Carter, you need to see this now. As Diane received the transmission, new alerts sounded across the bridge. The strange energy readings Dr. Wright had detected were growing stronger. At the edge of the battle zone, space itself seemed to darken. All ships fall back to defensive positions, Diane ordered immediately, and open a channel to the Herald Command. When the Herald leader appeared on screen again, Diane spoke quickly. We've seen it. The void. It's here, isn't it? The first tendrils only, the Herald confirmed. The main entity approaches. Our test was to prepare you, but it comes earlier than expected. Diane made a swift decision. Then we fight together. Your technology and our unpredictability. We need to evacuate this sector immediately and prepare the core worlds. After a long pause, the Herald leader agreed. We will share what we know. The test is over. Now survival begins. In the days that followed, a new alliance formed. The Heralds joined with the human-led forces, sharing their advanced technology while humans taught them unpredictable tactics and adaptability. Dr. Wright's treatments were refined, helping more council species recover from network dependence. 1 month later, representatives from all surviving species gathered on Earth to sign a new galactic charter. Susan Bennett stood before them, the document in her hands. Today, we recognize that diversity is our greatest strength, she told the assembly. The different evolutionary paths our species have taken each bring unique advantages. The harsh worlds that created humans and others like us produced adaptability and resilience. The peaceful worlds produced cooperation and harmony. Together, we are stronger than apart. The first signature on the charter was human. The second was Herald. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Carter stood with Captain Vasquez by a window overlooking the rebuilt communication center. Earth had become the heart of galactic civilization, not through conquest but through necessity. Do you think we can win against this void? Laura asked quietly. Diane watched as human engineers worked alongside aliens and even heralds, creating new systems with redundancies and alternatives at every level. I think we have a chance, she replied. If the galaxy has learned anything from this crisis, it's that relying on a single approach is fatal. Diversity and adaptability are the keys to survival. In the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, something watched and waited. But it would not find easy prey. It would find a civilization of Deathworlders and survivors, ready to fight for their existence with every strategy imaginable. The galaxy had faltered, but it had not fallen. And humanity, once dismissed as primitive newcomers, now stood at the center of the greatest alliance the universe had ever seen.